Welcome to Career in Ruins, where this week we'll be delivering our first podcast under a non-conservative government. Derek, it's been a while.
I was wondering where you were going with the intro, but that's nice. Yeah.
I thought it was a nice little headline because obviously the election was a while ago, but it's a nice little headline to demonstrate how much has taken place since the 23rd of January when we last did a Career in Ruins proper podcast.
I know so much has been going on, but I've got to know, and I'm going to have to Google it while we talk. How many, and have a guess, how many prime ministers have we had since we started recording Career in
Oh,
Ruins?
okay. Well, I know we've done over 50 podcasts.
When did we
So
start? When did we kick off?
are we three? We're probably 3 or 4 years old, right?
Yeah.
I should probably know that. So 3 or 4 years doesn't seem that long. Probably one prime minister would seem reasonable. Do you think?
I'm going to say a few more than that. Let's see. Just opening up my notes now.
So, I can label them off. It'll be five.
If we had May, we had.
Oh, did we have May?
I think we had
No.
May.
Okay. Did we have Cameron?
We didn't hit Cameron, I don't think.
Okay.
May have
Okay.
hit May.
May, Boris, Truss, Sunak, and Starmer. That's me. I said five.
Yeah.
I said five. Enough of politics. Enough politics aside, that was a deliberate segue into sort of highlighting how much time has passed since we've actually sat down and done a new season of Career in Ruins.
It does feel like a long time. I literally had to dust off my podcasting headset today.
There we go. Well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad we're here. We've got a great person to talk to in a bit. But in preparation for this, I sat down and I sort of looked through my calendar. My calendar, I just look at my photos of the different things I've done every month or on Instagram. But it's highlights, and they're we've done loads. We've done so much in the last what would it be, 10 months. So I'm going to throw a few things out there, and as and when you want to chime in and join my list, discuss things in my list, chip in or let me carry on. Okay, so things that we have done in the last 10 months. I'm going to easy ball here for you. The premiere of Sherwood Pines.
Oh, what a highlight. That is without question one of the best moments of the year for me. There's two or three real highlights from this year for me, and that one is definitely in the top three.
So that's a lovely Time Team episode that we recorded back in October last year, and it went out in July, I believe, if I remember correctly, during the 110th anniversary of the start of the First World War. It's all about First World War training trenches on a forestry England site called Sherwood Pines, and it was pretty special. So that was cool. We worked on editing that and producing that, and it's your first presenting role, which you did a fantastic job at, solo presenting role. In that vein, Farley Moore. Any thoughts on that? Farley Moore.
Farley Moore, is that one top secret? Can we talk about that one? We had a lovely
we can give a hint. We can give a hint.
So we went up to a lovely site at Farley Moor near Matlock, which is one of my favourite parts of the world anyway, up in is it the Peak District or is it Peak District adjacent?
Adjacent, yeah.
And we excavated a particularly rare and interesting kind of site, something that not many people get to excavate.
Yeah, that's good. So that's coming up. So we started to see the footage of that, but it's a pretty unique opportunity to dig this type of site. So looking forward to that going out. Festival of Archaeology, Derek.
Oh gosh, do you know what? When I was putting together my top three, I'd completely forgotten we did that. That that was an absolute treat, and that was probably our last podcast, wasn't it?
Yeah. We slept in a roundhouse.
Yeah, slept in a roundhouse on top of a partially deflated paddleboard.
We paddleboarded out to a cranog.
We say bucket list quite a lot on this podcast, but for me that was a bucket list moment. I've studied the Iron Age for many a moon, many a year, and to actually put 2 feet on top of a cranog, even if it was a foot or two underwater, was a real highlight moment. It was
Yeah.
such a nerdy highlight, and to be able to paddleboard out to it and have the CEO of the CBA swimming alongside us was
It
a
was good.
genuine
And
treat.
meet the lovely people at Crannog Centre as well who do an amazing job out there. So
Oh,
yeah.
every single one of them was an absolute pro, was so welcoming and warm. And it's for me, I mean, there's a lot of brilliant sites out there like at Butser Ancient Farms, amazing, the Cranbourne Ancient Technology Centre. And I think all of those sites have something in common, which is a huge passion for experimental archaeology and engaging with the past in different ways. But I must admit, there was something about the the resilience of the Crannog Centre coming back after a catastrophic fire years ago and rising from the ashes, literally rising from the ashes to produce something as spectacular as the new Crannog Centre was amazing to see.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's my favorite podcast we've ever done. So
Mm.
I think we did them justice. After today's, obviously, because I know the
Well, yeah.
person that we're about to interview is listening into this. But okay, I'm going to stick to the water theme. Mortar
Hmm.
wreck.
Mortar Wreck, again, another highlight that didn't quite make the top three. There's too many highlights, Lawrence. Um, uh,
Oh
I've
yeah,
give myself some editing
that's
to
how
do
much
there.
you love the water wreck. Speechless.
My regular listeners of the podcast will hopefully remember that some time ago we went out to visit the Mortar Wreck. I'm sure we've talked about it before
Yeah,
in a previous
in Pool
episode.
Harbour, or just outside Pool Harbour.
And it was a transformative experience in terms of filming stuff because we were flying drones off boats, which is definitely legal, and
You were
we
making
got
similar noises to the you just making, but over the side of a boat.
yeah, there was a certain amount of vomiting involved in the experience for me. It was 2 or 3 hours of absolute joy, followed by 4 hours of complete abject misery. However, this time, I discovered you can pop a couple of pills and be perfectly fine. So now I'm a boat guy. I can go on boats.
You're a boat guy, and as a result, we got to see the lifting of some amazing. What are they? Tomb slabs,
Yeah,
the
grave
actual
slabs.
grave
Yeah.
slabs that go, they're beautifully carved, and there'll be something coming out with a bit more detail on that in the not too distant future. But I don't think I've done any spoilers there because it was in a
No,
press
no.
release and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah. It,
But
it was an absolutely monstrous operation, and it inspired me. Since then, I've had a go at diving, which was again an absolute highlight.
ah,
Admittedly, I was in a school swimming pool, so I didn't go very deep, but I don't think I've ever known peace like sitting in the deep end of a swimming pool, no one around me, just focusing on breathing
there's
in
a
and
guy with
out.
two small children talking right there.
It was utter zen. No one could get to me. No one could say anything. It was just hand signals and peace.
I love it. I love it. Staying on the wreck theme, Sutton Hoo.
Sutton Who, good Lord. Was that this year as well? We have
Mhm.
done quite a lot of stuff this year.
I'm only halfway through the list now. We've got to keep rattling through.
Sutton Who, fantastic experience, brilliant site. And again, I forget how fortunate we are at times, but that was one moment where our TV star privilege came out a little bit in that we got to camp the night at Sutton Hoo. We got to stay in a tent and we got to sit, me, you, and Hilda, the wonderful Hilda, sitting on top of a Saxon burial mound with the site to ourselves after it had closed and just chilling, utter bliss.
You might have had a beer.
Might have had a beer.
That was good. But also, we were a bit cheeky and we what's the word, chartered a boat and we went and experienced it. We made the most of it. It was bloody brilliant, wasn't it, mate? I can't wait for those
I
episodes to
know,
come out.
another boaty experience.
And that was good. Let's go on land. I'm just going to throw something out there. Don't need too much details, but camper vans.
Camper vans. For me, this is the year of the camper van, and I say that with bated breath because mine's currently getting an MOT, and I'm a bit scared
Oh,
because it's something of a wreck, but life-changing experience of owning a camper van. I can't believe it. I can just drive somewhere and sleep. It's great. I mean, there's a peace theme here that I can just go off on my own in the middle of nowhere with a camper van.
we've both got camper vans now. We're both definitely making the most of it, and we're definitely incorporating them in our archaeological adventures. So looking more forward to doing
Mm.
more of that soon, and possibly something for the Career in Ruins YouTube channel, maybe. So let's keep an eye on that.
Oh, yes.
I guess there's been other cool things, both regionally. So we've been popping out to see Cern Abbey with Hugh
Mhm.
Wilmot. and time team were filming there, but we got to hang out and do a lot of exciting investigations in that area, from geophysics to Harry popped out with his drone, and then looking at the excavations that took place there. That's nice, just down the road as well in Dorset. I had a nice time playing with a robotic dog down a mine in the Forest of Dean. That
That
was
did look
wicked.
fun. Did you pat it on its robotic head at any
I
point?
told it to sit and it sat. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's a guy around the corner with a controller that just did it. But I like to think what I saw is what happened. So that was very cool. Laser scanning mines with a robotic dog. Um, but there's also been some international travel. So myself and Harry went on a ride from Waterloo Station to the Battle of Waterloo, 250 miles.
No, you say ride. Presumably that's not petrol powered in any way.
No, push bike. It was great. Probably one of the hardest physical things I've ever done, but really good. And there's still opportunities to sponsor Harry and myself for that. So if people want to learn more, check it out on our social media pages, and you'll be able to find out more. But also, I guess we both got away elsewhere. So I visited New Zealand and the Cook Islands briefly, and you've been out to Greece again as well.
Yeah, a cracking season in Greece. 3 weeks of brilliant excavation in the sun. No floods this year, which was very nice. No bad weather. Lovely team. It was a great time.
Yeah, it's been, as I say, we've been very lucky. But am I right in thinking that in the last 10 months, you've also secured a major promotion?
Yes. A major promotion indeed. I'm the head of archaeology and anthropology at Bournemouth University now.
Yeah, you are, buddy. Yeah, you are. What does that entail?
Well, interestingly, that hadn't made the top three either, but I'd like to say it means I get to do tons and tons of brilliant archaeology. I get to do archaeological strategy and things like that. Ultimately, there's a lot of admin, a lot of paperwork. I seem to spend most of my day approving risk assessments and holiday.
Do they know that's your strongest point?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm a big fan of budget spreadsheets. There's nothing quite like them.
Ooh,
Mm.
nice. You've changed. You've
I
changed.
know.
Oh, well, no,
Oh,
that's amazing news, and congratulations on that, mate. And it's definitely one to celebrate through the
oh,
airwaves with our podcast.
oh,
But
it definitely is. And to be honest, I joke, but there is no, for me, there's no better group of people than the folks I work with. And being able to be head of our department is an absolute honor.
yeah, no, that's great. And as ever, we've got that ever never ending discussion point of you make your own luck, but I think we can comfortably lean back on the fact that we've been very lucky in the last
Mm.
10 months and sort of things that have been going on, and we're so grateful for the opportunities that our amazing colleagues have provided to us, and we're going to try and tap into that over this season of the podcast as well.
Speaking of luck, though, there's one thing you haven't mentioned that was in my top three, and I suspect you haven't mentioned it because you didn't get invited. But one of the absolute
This.
highlights of the year for me was I got to pretend to be a media person and I got to go to an award ceremony.
Oh
It was
yeah.
amazing. The brilliant Karen Kirk, who
Oh,
was
nice.
one of our previous interviewees from the last season, managed to score us tickets to the Broadcast Digital Awards.
Well, there's a reason I didn't mention this, Derek, because it's not Career in Ruins that got shortlisted. It's Time Team. So, I mean, we've covered them
I know.
enough. We've covered them
Career in
enough.
Ruins, life goals is
Yeah.
to
If
get
anyone wants to sponsor, no, nominate us for an award, then
be best
we'll pay the
podcast
£500 per
2025.
ticket to attend. Um, but I guess on the Time Team front, one thing I didn't mention was the thing, probably the most recent thing that we've done, and that
Hmm.
was the Norton Disney dig.
Crack and dig that one. It was a community focused dig, shall we say?
Hmm.
Links to the Disney family. Am I allowed to say that?
Disney,
To Disney.
Disney.
And it was the first time team in a while, actually. We've got to throw ourselves into dig watch in a big way. And I'd
Yeah.
forgotten how much fun it is just to bodge around with a camera and mess around in the background.
No, it's good. It was good, but it was on that dig that we took the opportunity to collar the first Career of Ruins participants in this new season.
And this one is a genuinely exciting one because this person it's someone who I think it's fair to say could operate under the shadows or in the shadows a little bit. He works very hard in the background, doesn't necessarily put himself front and center. So to get him here today and put him front and center is an absolute treat. So today we are joined by Chris Leonard, who is a senior project officer at Cotswold Archaeology, where he's been leading projects now for 16 years, including a pretty big one at Sizewell Nuclear Power Station. And I would say he's known for his hands-on experience and reliable leadership, where he's a regular on-time team and he's respected and trusted as a safe pair of hands on many of our digs, not just the most recent one. And he's got a huge passion for doing archaeology and doing archaeology well, and has had an incredibly rich career. So I'm looking forward to chatting to him today. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. I've never had an introduction before, I don't think, so that was quite an experience in itself.
Well, there we go. And what Derek's introduction missed out is that you're a thoroughly lovely human being. So it's so nice to have you with us tonight. And thank you for giving up your time, for having a bit of a ramble chat about your career in ruins. Now, before we go too far, I always feel like whenever Derek and I, turn up to where Chris is on a time team site, there's an audible exhale of air, and it's just like, what do you want?
It's not that I'm not pleased to see you,
but
usually if you come along, there's a camera crew in tow, and that's not my favourite part of the time team experience.
Oh, you're so good, Chris, and you're great on camera, but also the reason we want you here today is because you're such a great archaeologist. And you mentioned before we started that you've listened to all the past Career in Ruins, which is I'm really sorry about. It's really rather unfortunate. Yeah, thank you for those listens. But so you'll know the format of the podcast, and I wonder if you could kick us off by just talking us through your career to date, how you got to being the successful commercial archaeologist that you are today.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a strange way into it. I wasn't one of these kids who always wanted to be an archaeologist and spent their summer holidays digging with Cunliffe and all this kind of thing. I was, I should have been. We moved to Usk, which is a small town in Wales, when I was 4 or 5, and that's where the first Roman fortress was in Wales with their westward expansion. And the year we moved there, they were having a big rescue excavation. And I have this dim memory of wandering around site on an open day. And then I went to school in Caerleon, which is obviously another Roman fortress town. And break times, I used to walk past the amphitheatre and the barracks and everything, and all of this made absolutely no impact on me. I just wanted to be a footballer. And I was sufficiently not rubbish that into my early teens, this was still a possibility. So that was where all my direction was when I was a kid. But I was also an avid reader, and every week would go down the library and bring back armfuls of books to read. As I got more into my football, I started sending my dad in my place and just said, just bring me back books, you know what I like. I think one day he decided to take revenge on me and brought back the biggest book he could find in the library, which was The Conquest of the Incas by John Hemming. And I read that, and it was an absolute light bulb moment for me. It was this kind of tale of this like magical, exotic culture that did things completely differently to how we do things. And then these 120 men from Spain who landed on the coast and subdued an empire. Of course, it was nothing really like that, but that's the imaginations that I had. And that kind of kickstarted a love and an interest for me in Latin American archaeology. And about the same time, there was a program called Time Team that appeared on the telly and became weekend viewing. And I looked at these people, this weird assortment of characters bobbing around in trenches, not taking themselves or anything else particularly seriously. I thought, that looks quite fun, I could do something like that. But I didn't really think of it as a career, so I kind of parked it to one side, made my university choices, thinking that I would want to do something Latin American, but maybe some archaeology in Latin America, but didn't really know how to go about this thing. So I went for Latin American studies as my degree, as the broadest thing I I could find to give me the most options. And it turned out to be brilliant. It's a 4-year course. And the third year of the course you spend in Latin America doing research, which was brilliant. So I spent 10 months in Peru.
Playing football?
No, unfortunately not. I was supposed to be associated with the Pontifical Catholic University of Lima or something like that. I went there once. The lecturer I was supposed to meet wasn't there. So I decided, sod this for a game of soldiers. I'm just going to bum around Peru for 10 months. So that's exactly what I did. I made sure I visited an internet cafe about 8 months in to send in my pre-dissertation report. But aside from that, I just traveled around Peru, staying in hostels and visiting hundreds of archaeological sites. And that was
amazing.
Yeah, probably the best 10 months of my life. In no way prepared me for a career in archaeology, but it was brilliant fun. And saddled me with debt that it took me about 15 years to pay off.
Totally worth it.
Yeah, totally worth it. Still wouldn't change it. So got back, finished my Latin American studies course, and thought, okay, well, if I'm going to be an archaeologist, I need to actually think about knowing some archaeology. So I applied for and got onto an MA course, part-time MA course in Liverpool, where I did my undergraduate degree, doing straight archaeology. And in the bridge year in the bridge summer to help me get into the course and get up to speed, I got to do 2 weeks at Chester Roman Amphitheatre with Tony Wilmot, which was great fun. So my first ever experience of archaeology was digging potholes in a Roman road that went around the outside of the amphitheatre.
Wow,
that was great. Having to plan all these stone cobbles and then the massive hole that I'd just taken out of them was great fun. Did most of the MA, and then there was a big fall down where my dissertation supervisor left, and he was the only person in the department who knew anything about Latin American archaeology, and I was trying to do a very specific dissertation on iconography that appears on pots in cultures of the northeast of Peru. And there just became a massive to-do about who would pick this up, and then there was lots of redefining of my title. I just thought, I can't do this. So I left the course, which was a bit of a sad moment for me, but also having done most of the course, I'd done some really good modules. So I'd done like GIS and lots of things like that stood me in really good stead for later on. So having walked out of that in a huff, I then realized that I still hadn't actually got any closer to getting myself a career in archaeology a year and a half down the road. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have to bite the bullet and do another MA and actually complete it this time. So I went looking for part-time MAs. I had to choose between two. There was a world art and archaeology course, which I won't name the university because I didn't go there. I went along for an interview with them, and they laid out what sounded like a really great academic course, and then said, in the summer in between your 2 years, you're going to go to Peru and run an archaeological excavation there. I thought, I can't do that. I've got 2 weeks of archaeological experience. I can't run a dig. And I mean, I probably could have blagged it and got through and had a great career in Peru now, and it would be a completely different podcast. But I didn't do that. Instead, I went down to the University of Sussex and did an MA in field archaeology, which was much more practical. I got to do things like DBAs and field walking and things like that. And halfway through that, I managed to get myself a job in archaeology, which was great. So the second year, I just did while I was working in archaeology. To pay for this course, I was working in a furniture shop in Brighton, and I was really pleased with it because they polished the long room tables at Lord's every winter, ready for next summer. So, halfway through that, I was just spam applying to every archaeological company. Have you got any jobs? Have you got any jobs? Have you got any jobs? And back then, it was always you need 6 months experience. There were no graduate trainee positions anywhere. So
that was such the thing, wasn't it? You got to have 6 months.
You have to have 6 months. So I'd got my 2 weeks at Chester. I'd done 10 weeks at Bamborough Research Project Field School. But I hadn't got any commercial experience. And then John Moores sent me an email back and said, we've got a dig coming up. Are you interested? I was like, yes. Ran upstairs, handed in my resignation. I'm going to be an archaeologist. And then 3 weeks later, I still hadn't heard anything back from them. I was like, ooh, I've got to leave this job in a week. I've handed in my 4 weeks notice and they still haven't got back to me yet. So I phoned them up and they said, oh, no, that we were just after expressions of interest when actually. So I went back cap in hand to the owner of the furniture factory and said, do you mind if I stay a bit longer? Thankfully, he was very forgiving and acquiesced. So I stayed for another month or so. And then Archaeological Solutions got in touch with me. They said, we're starting a project. Would you like to come along? I said, wait, are you actually starting a project? Can I come along? They said, yeah, of course. So I did it all over again, handed in my notice, and we signed up on a 6-week contract with AS, who were infamous at the time for taking people with no experience. So there was me and there was a bunch of others who they'd rushed to hire for this project. And so I went down. It was 6 weeks in Norfolk, digging a site. A dairy had just been demolished and was being turned into a block of flats. And we were basically, our excavation area was a donut shape around this demolished dairy where they'd just completely truncated away all of the archaeology. My first feature, they lined up all of the newbies and gave us all a 1 meter slot on this long ditch that ran the length of site. Mine was the closest to the demolition area, and everyone else had these beautiful U-shaped ditch profiles, and mine just kept going down and down and down. I was sitting there thinking, what's going on? Mine looks nothing like anyone else's. I called over the supervisor. I was like, I don't know what I've done. I must have overdug that. It was pure white chalk with black fill. He was like, no, you haven't overdug that. We would know if you'd overdug that. And it turned out I was digging where a machine scoop had taken a load of the ditch. I was just digging some modern demolition. So they're very nice about it and moved me off onto a pit, which I started digging. Again, this pit looked nothing like anyone else's pit. I was like, what's going on? This looks like other people have got meter deep pits with vertical sides and flat bases. And mine's about 20 centimeters deep. And I'm sure this looks like natural. It's up and down all over the place. So again, I called the supervisor over and I was like, I just don't understand what's going on. I was like kneeling next to my feature thinking, I've just given a degree and 2 MAs to get to this point. I don't think I can do archaeology. This is all gone horribly wrong.
I was going to say, this does sound like a recipe for a disaster. First of all, you've been sent to Norfolk. I mean, Then you got 6 week contract. Hooray!
Yeah.
From a nice secure job, and then machine scoop and all the other things that go on. And yet you're still in archaeology. How has this come to be, Chris?
I sat myself down, gave myself a talking to, and said, right, we'll see what happens on the next feature. One feature at a time. Let's see what happens. Then I got a lovely pit, beautiful deep sides, 4 fill layers. There was a body at the bottom, an Iron Age pit burial, which I got to dig. And then kind of everything just kind of came together and looked up from there. I was like, okay, I can do this. This is good. Okay, so we'll move on. And at the end of the 6 weeks, we all got let go. But I managed to pick up a contract with AOC, who were doing a dig down in Brighton where I still had my flat from the uni. And I basically got taken on as a local digger, someone they didn't have to pay accommodation for because they were based in London. So their core staff had to be put up near Brighton, whereas I was a local digger. I had no overheads. So they're like, well, what's the worst that can happen? We'll give them a contract.
So I got exactly the same sort of job in Worthing, in the town next to Brighton. So local digger working for AOC Archaeology.
So I got another 6 weeks or so out of that, and then AS were hiring again. So I gave them a call and said, "Can I come back?" And they said, "Yeah, okay. You weren't awful last time." So it turned out there were 3 or 4 of us from that first dig who got taken back on 6-month contracts. And from there, I just kept getting 6-month contract, occasional 1 week and 2 week contract, but kept building up the experience. And it was quite rare in those days for anyone to stay beyond 11 months at AS, because then they would have to start paying you sick pay and things like that. There was a very much a culture of contracts would end mid-December, and then there would be a rehiring period at the start of January. Thankfully, none of this stuff really happens anymore, but that was the way it was back then. It was a bit Wild West at times. So
how long ago are we talking, Chris?
So that was 2008 was when I started.
Okay.
So just before the financial crash. Kind of midway through spring of 2009, they then had to have a cut because all the work just dropped off, and I was let go. So basically, moved back home with my parents. I was like, oh, I think I've messed up again. There's no work in archaeology. I don't know what I'm going to do. But then 3 weeks later, I got a call from them saying, oh, we've got work again. Would you like to come back? And it's kind of from that point that it all kind of started slotting into place. So I kept working hard, kept improving myself. Eventually, I got to start running sites, which was good. I wasn't a supervisor at the time. I was just running sites. And then there was one particularly good site in Soham, a nice Roman site, that I got to write the report for. And then it occurred to them that they can't put out this report authored by me if I'm not a project leader or supervisor. So I got a promotion contingent on me actually learning to drive, which I've managed to resist doing up until this point.
Nice.
Kind of kept progressing from there, became a supervisor there, stayed for another year and a half, and then saw that Cotswold were advertising. So we're kind of into 2012 now. And they just opened up a brand new Milton Keynes office, which wasn't too far from where I was in Suffolk. So I thought that'd be quite a nice little something to do. And a bigger company, bigger projects, I can expand my skills and everything. Went through the interview, got offered the job, but I had to go to Cirencester because I didn't have enough experience to be at their fledgling Milton Keynes office.
Oh.
So it was a bit of a curveball, but I thought, oh, that's close to Wessex. Wessex is famous for its archaeology. So yeah, why not? Let's give it a go. And I've been here ever since. Progressed through to project officer and then senior project officer. And yeah, that's where I am now.
So, Chris, did you ever manage to make it to Milton Keynes, or have you been in Cirencester ever since?
Been in Cirencester ever since. Yeah, I have worked with the Milton Keynes office quite a few times, but yeah, I've always been at the Cirencester office since I've been here. Yeah.
Having spent a fair amount of time in Milton Keynes, I think you probably dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. Now, as nice as Milton Keynes is, it'd be remiss of us to chat with you, Chris, about your career and particularly, I think a number of people have spoken to us and said that we haven't had a proper representation of commercial archaeologists on Career in Ruins. So
no pressure, Chris.
No pressure, but I wonder if you can give us a sort of your take on commercial archaeology as a career choice, and I know obviously it's very difficult because everyone's career trajectories are different. But any general takeaways or suggestions for people thinking about taking this avenue within our discipline as opposed to all the other amazing options that are out there? Not that this isn't amazing, I should say.
I would say there are definite upsides to commercial archaeology. One of the things is the breadth and depth of sites that you do is not something that you would get to do in academia, really, where you kind of focus on a time period or focus on a specific site and kind of see that through for your career, really devote your career to one specific area. In commercial, you're doing a different site every month, every 2 months, maybe even every week. So you really get to experience everything, which is what I like about it. I love the kind of pick and mix nature. You don't know where you're going. You haven't selected a project because you think there's amazing potential there. You just get put somewhere and you go and find out what there is. That really appeals to me. I think I'm quite an itinerant person by nature. So having that kind of you never know what's coming next thrown at you, I really enjoy that.
And you mentioned in your chat that you started just before the 2008 recession. So I came out of university at the very beginning of the recession. You mentioned that needing that 6 months experience, couldn't get that 6 months experience. And as a result of those unfortunate events unfolding, I'm now in a completely different career path to being a commercial archaeologist, which I thought I wanted to be when I was at university. And I just wondered how beholden commercial archaeology is to these sort of big events. And I guess it's probably a lazy question, because it's the same for my job and it's the same for Derek's job. But we talked about a new government. There are decisions that they'll make that won't necessarily affect me and Derek. So the decisions not to put a tunnel past Stonehenge, or the decision to change the route or shorten the route of HS2 and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it does have an effect. Not as much now as it did back in 2008. I think companies are wiser to that situation, but it does still happen. Like the cancelling of that infamous road scheme led to lots of people being laid off, and especially at the start of your career, you are susceptible to that happening to you. You don't have the job security, you don't have the credit in the bank. I think our last round of redundancies is probably 6 or 7 years ago now, so it's not a frequent thing anymore. And the days of fire and rehire and letting contracts run down at opportune moments in the year and things like that doesn't really happen anymore. It's certainly a more stable career than it has been.
It's an interesting point, though, because I think we were probably all hit by that same fiscal shock in different ways. Because I was working in the field at Wessex in 2007, and I left just before, when the rumblings of the financial crisis were starting to creep in, and that kind of forced my career off into a different direction. It forced Lawrence's off. You kind of kept your head down and persevered through it. And there's probably a good, solid career in Ruins message in that is that there are likely to be some rumbles coming up in the future. We never know what the future will hold for the profession, but all three of us managed to somehow bludgeon our way through and forge careers in archaeology through that. And you said something in your chat, which I think might become a new motto for me, if not for the podcast, of one feature at a time. Treating the site one feature at a time, not worrying so much about what's coming next, dealing with what's in front of you and just doing the best job you can. And I think there's probably a big career in Ruins life message in that.
Yeah, that's lovely.
It is, especially in commercial archaeology, where you're not only digging in the summer in great conditions and things. Sometimes life can get a bit of a grind, but if you just take it one feature at a time and put everything you've got into that feature and enjoy it as much as you can, then it's a way for me of getting through it. It doesn't matter that it's hammering it down because I'm all togged up in my PPE and I've got my hard hat on. The rain's not hitting me. I'm just blasting away at this feature and hunting for the next bit of pottery that's going to come out of it.
Oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. And I appreciate we've gone off on a bit of a tangent from the normal podcast structure. And we'll let Derek bring in the next question after this. But I just one additional question, I guess, Chris, is with all of that in mind, do you have any suggestions, recommendations, tips for prospective commercial archaeologists who might be in their second or third year of university thinking, do you know what, I really want to be working in that area of the discipline?
Same advice I give to anyone anywhere, which is go for it. Just give it your best shot and see what you think of it. Commercial archaeology isn't for everyone. I wish that it was, but you have to have certain characteristics, I suppose, to do it. You have to be resilient. You have to be able to take the rough with the smooth quite a lot of the time. When I first moved to Cotswold, I was thinking, this is it, big company, big projects. This is what I want to get my teeth into. And actually, the first 18 months that I was there, I was just on the watching brief circuit, which is soul destroying for me. I like being in teams, working on exciting projects. And when you're on watching briefs, you're usually sat on your own in a van, waiting for builders to finally dig a foundation trench somewhere. And then you get out, you take a couple of photos, there's nothing to see, you go back to the van, no one wants you there. No one expects you to find anything. It is deathly dull. Some people love it. They love that they can go and sit in a van, read a book, and pick up a paycheck. But it's absolutely soul destroying.
I'm gonna be a bit naughty now and just say that there's a good but competitive YouTube channel called or series called the Your Watching Brief, and your description of a watching brief and the content is probably comparable. Sorry guys, that's really naughty. Right? That got really personal really quickly.
I know. You took that. I didn't see that. I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to put a pin in this now and move us along. I'm going to let Chris put the trauma of watching briefs behind him, and I'm going to let you put the trauma of insulting other podcasts behind you, Lawrence, and move us along a bit. And I know from many conversations we've had and chatting before the podcast that alongside those watching briefs, you've done some incredible things in your career, Chris. And I'm wondering if there's any site or project you're particularly proud of.
I would like to answer this in two parts, if I can, because the first part is not to do with sites, but it's to do with people. And I've been doing this for so long now that I've actually watched lots of people come in as trainees, progress through archaeologists, and now supervisors and project officers in their own right, or have gone off to do other aspects of archaeology. And that's something that I really do feel proud of. Not that I've made them into this thing, or even that I've helped them at all, really, but just that I feel a pride in being able to see these people come up and go through the stages and make a mark in their own right. And that's something amazing, I think, when you've been in this profession for that long, to see that. As far as actual sites go, the ones I have the most pride in are probably the Type 2 fun sites. They're the ones that are really, really tough at the time, but you come out of thinking, I'm glad we managed to do a good job of that. So one is we did a project up near Warwick, a small village with a lovely medieval church, and they wanted to put a church hall right in the graveyard. So I don't know why. They commissioned Cotswold to come in and do an evaluation of it. And we did a single trench because it's only a small graveyard, and found 11 bodies within this 10-meter trench, I think. And yet they still wanted to go ahead. So we priced up. But the problem with the evals is that when you find human remains in an evaluation, you don't dig them up, you just cover them back over. So what we didn't realize at the time is that these were all stacked 3 or 4 deep. So we priced up, extrapolating out a body a meter, which came out at something like 30 bodies. And in fact, we found something like 120. So it's turned into a massive cemetery clearance site. Some of the bodies were even they were from the 1970s. They still had headstones. They're very much still decomposing. So there were all kinds of trials and tribulations on this site. We had weekly meetings with the church committee, who summoned us in, sat us on pews, and started screaming and shouting at us about how we were ruining their church funds. They would have no money left for this hall. Didn't we know how much we were costing them? All this kind of thing. But not only did we come out having done a really good job of recording all of these bodies, actually I got to work with, for the first time, my best friend Alison, who was later best man at my wedding, and we really bonded over this site, and that was like a lovely memory for me. And then the other one that really sticks out is the Sizewell nuclear power station, where we were down there for 4 years, me and Alison again. So we'd really bonded by this time.
Not through some sort of nuclear fusion or anything like that.
No, just living with each other in holiday cottages in Suffolk every day of the week for 4 years. Well, we did thousands of trenches across the Suffolk countryside. We found some amazing archaeology. But there was the whole thing of we were commuting 4 hours on a Monday morning and back again on a Friday. We were running multiple teams on multiple sites. There were geophysics involved as well as archaeology. It was a really complex process. And we came out and we got a good result out of it and produced some really good reports. And that's all feeding into the mitigation phase that's going on now. So Cotswold are down there with Oxford as a joint venture, digging up loads of excavation areas all over Suffolk because of the work we did during the evaluation. That's really good.
Yeah, they're all lovely examples. I love your first one, the idea of being proud of seeing people progress and enhance. And I think, yeah, the sign of any decent team leader or project manager or just anyone that's managing staff and understanding the value of people and seeing them, being happy to see them progress, knowing that will benefit you and the projects as well as themselves is a really good thing to be proud of. So I like that a lot, mate. So we've done pride. What about envy?
Envy. I consciously try now not to be envious of my colleagues who may be on bigger or better projects, because you do that and it starts eating away into your own projects. And in commercial, you really have to make the best of the site that you're on. You can't be diverting energy into thinking, oh, what's so and so doing on their side. So instead of that, I'd like to say there are some things I'd still want to do in my career. Really, I mean, that is dig abroad and specifically dig in Peru. I would still love to be able to do that. I don't know how it could possibly happen. There isn't really a commercial sector in Peru that, in the same way that there is here, that you can go and get a job at a unit or anything. But I mean, that is something I would love to do one day if Tim Taylor's listening and is going to.
Well, not even Tim Taylor. I mean, we're international, man. So anyone that's listening out there to Career in Ruins, hola, ¿cómo está?
If I could fit in a suitcase, you two can take me on one of your jaunts anytime you want.
I was going to say, how do you feel about a busman's holiday in Greece one time, Chris?
Take me now.
You're hired.
I'm not sure they put oxygen in the air holds to go into the Cook Islands, I'm afraid, but I can look into it. On the luggage holds, sorry. Yeah, well, I'm sure you'd be a very welcome addition to any international digging team. I love the idea that we will meet up again in 10 years' time, or obviously we'll see each other before then, but in 10 years' time we'll reflect and you'll have just done a year's field season in Peru, having previously thought, I could never do that. And then you're like, easy.
Yeah.
Dos cerveza, por favor.
I didn't know you spoke Spanish, Lawrence. Say some more.
¿Dónde está la biblioteca? Thank you, dodgeball.
I'd like to take this moment to apologise to our Spanish listeners.
That's a good thing to be envious of. But I think, if we can't help Derek, then listeners, look up Chris on the internet, contact him on his Cotswold's email address, and tell him how he can get involved in how you want this incredibly talented and skilled excavator out on your site in Peru or anywhere else in South America, or just Peru?
I'll take anywhere. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. So I guess that leads us on to our final question. We've dusted off the time machine, given it's gone through its MOT, which is more than can be said for Derek's van, and we're giving you a return ticket to anywhere and any time you would like to go. Okay.
Well, I'm kind of enjoying how this segment has progressed. Is now more like Mornington Crescent over the years, and that there's no rules to this at all. So I'm going to invoke the Helen Geek clause. That you can stay as long as you want, but come back to the same time in the present.
All right.
All right. So I'm going to pay aging. That one. Without aging. Yeah, that's a definite subclause that I'm adding. So I'm off to Peru. No surprises there. About 1470 AD. Which is just as the Inca were taking over the Chachapoya in the northeast of Peru. And it's about 60 years before Pizarro lands and launches the Spanish conquest. So I kind of want to experience that whole changing dynamic of this people who are essentially a trader, a bridge between the Pacific Ocean on the west of Peru and the Amazon jungle on the east, and they seem to be this kind of trading loose collection of cities that traded across the mountain passes. how they went from that to being part of the Inca Empire. And then when the Spanish arrived, they were fighting on the side of the Spanish against the Incas because the Inca rule was so onerous on them. And ahead of the Spanish arriving, you've got the waves of smallpox that were sweeping down South America. So it's just that whole dynamic and change of a culture that's uprooted not once but twice within some people's lifetimes, become part of two massive empires, and are never happy being part of either of them. So I'd love to see that and just experience that whole like era of turmoil without having to actually live through it in the present, where you have your own worries.
I love that. Is it a bit too close to think the political turmoils that are going on now at the moment?
Well,
let's not make it comparable. Yeah.
I'm also going to add in the Leonard subclause, which is that you can make a pit stop on the way back. Because, I mean, I'm traveling back 600 years.
But is this a pit stop in time or in space? As in distance from A to B, you're going to stop on the way back as the crow flies, or are you stopping somewhere between time?
Somewhere between time. Well, time and space, but somewhere between time. Yeah. And I'm just going to stop in at my wedding on the way back, and I'm just going to experience that bird's eye viewpoint without being involved in the maelstrom, and just kind of see it all happen and play out. I think that would be a really worthwhile experience.
Very nice. You weren't too drunk on your wedding day, were you, that you can't remember it?
Yeah, absolutely hammered.
Brilliant. Oh, that's lovely. That's up there with the Neil Emmanuel's birth of his kittens or something.
And I can confirm, Chris, having just looked at our statistics, over the last 24 months, we've had 3 downloads in Peru, so you never know.
Oh, wow. Okay. Excellent.
Perfect. Oh, well, yeah. What's your email? No, don't share it. No.
Contact us on Instagram. We'll forward it on.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Chris. That was absolutely lovely. And this has been a fantastically joyful return to podding, and what a lovely way to spend what is a very chilly November evening in Britain tonight. Before we wrap up, though, I just want to give a big shout out to all of our regular listeners, Chris included, for carrying on listening to us. I think if you weren't there, if we didn't know you were waiting in the wings for that next download, we wouldn't still be here doing it. So it's an absolute joy to know that there are folks out there listening to us and enjoying our content and tuning in on a regular basis. And I'd also like to chuck out a massive thank you to those Patreons who are continuing to support us, continuing to make sure that our hosting fees are paid, our various podcasting
fees,
website fees, all the things that are sort of skulk in the background and are necessary, which we do anyway, but it is lovely that there's such support out there to allow us to continue to do that.
Absolutely, couldn't echo that more, and you're all fantastic, so thank you as ever for your support. Now, before we go, Derek, you and I have been playing around a lot with AI of late, and you did a fantastic job using AI to write Chris's introduction for today's podcast, for example.
We don't talk
more
about
excitingly, using AI to write songs. So I'm going to set us a challenge to create a new Career in Ruins AI song for the end of every forthcoming podcast in this season. Everyone might hate us for it, but I don't care. So I'm going to kick us off with this little beauty, because I think it ticks so many boxes of our music genres, a bit pop punk, a bit grungy, and I hope everyone likes it. Until the next podcast, let us know what you think, and we'll see you all next week, which is Mike Parker Pearson.
Whoa.
So for now, enjoy this song, and we'll see you all very soon.
Ancient clues, every piece a map to views. We uncover history's mysteries tight, reading shadows and fading light. rocks and shards and ancient clues. Every piece a map to views. We uncover history's mysteries, tight read shadows and fading light. It's just another day in the office. Tombs and ruins fuel our bliss. We sift the sands, time we kiss. It's just another day in the office. Trekking mountains, valleys wide, from deserts to the ocean's tide. We unveil stories kept so deep, secrets in the ground asleep. Reconstructing days long gone, piece by piece till dawn is done. Lawrence laughs, says dig some more. Derek smiles, we hunt for more. It's just another day in the office. Tombs and ruins fuel our bliss. We sift the sands, time we kiss. It's just another day in the office. It's just another day in the office. Tombs and ruins fuel our bliss. We sift the sands, time we kiss. It's just another day in the